Hello and welcome to my brand new podcast. This one's called Talking Balls. I know I've been a bit off and on with the podcasts over the years, but hopefully this one is going to stick around. Um, I will still be doing my other podcast with Ladipo Brothers United. I'll attach a link to that in the show notes. But this new podcast is going to be hosted by me and me alone. I may have guests, I may not have guests, depending on how popular stuff is and depending on how sociable I feel. But without further ado, I'm going to get into this. So thank you again for listening and let's get into it. This first episode, I'm going to be reviewing the season that just went by, 2025-26 season, focusing mainly on the Premier League. And for this, I am going to be looking at um, giving out season awards. So a lot of it will be in the style of the usual awards given out by the Premier League and also some other categories, mainly from dubbed from like Sky Sports and stuff. But without let's get on it, shall we? First off, I think first award is going to be the big one. It's the one that everyone's usually keeping an eye out for. So, Player of the Year. Um, by the way, the way I'm going to do this is for each award or each category, I'm going to try and give a podium. So, third place, second place, and then name the winner, in my opinion, anyway. There will be some where I might give a few shout outs as well, in addition to those on the podium. So, bear with me while I do it. First award, player of the season. I think it's been a great season for several players. Likes of Antoine Semenyo, what he did at Bournemouth and then City. Igor Thiago breaking Brentford's record for top goal scorer in a single season, and also just what his the work he's done coming out seemingly nowhere. But of course, you've always got to look at the team that won it, so the team that was best throughout the season. And to start off the podium, I'm going to go with Declan Rice from Arsenal, mainly because he's been the energy in the Arsenal midfield. And he's added layers to his game in terms of getting goals and also his set piece prowess. I mean, the best example is from last season when he scored those free kicks against Real Madrid. But it's just a sign of the growth that he's continued to add to his game. Now, the reason I don't have Declan Rice in top two is because, as some people have noted elsewhere, he did play a lot of games in other competitions as well, and it did seem like towards the end of the season he was a bit tired. You could tell his legs weren't moving as quickly as they could, and it just seemed like he his heavy game load was catching up to him a little bit. So for me, Declan Rice, brilliant season, third place. Second place, his teammate David Raya, who has shown again that he's just the league's best keeper by a mile. He's been absolutely brilliant for Arsenal. He's come up big time after time for them. Biggest game I would say is the West Ham game where he made that incredible save against Matheus Fernandes. That could potentially be described as a title winning save because without if he doesn't make that save, West Ham probably going to win that game, in my opinion. And this who knows? I mean, Arsenal may still have won the league title, but it would have come down to the final day. And once you come down to the final day, once you come down to one game, it's always hard to predict in that situation. So yeah, David Raya, second place. Winner, in my book, Manchester United fan. So happy for him because he's been through a lot, not just on the pitch with the relatively poor quality of teammates he's had over the years in a United team that has been going through a lot of upheaval, especially recently with loads of staff turnover, etc. But also with what I feel is is an unfair amount of criticism levied against him. But Bruno Fernandes has been, without a doubt, the best player in the league, Premier League this season. I mean, to break the assist record set by Thierry Henry 21, 22 years ago, equal by De Bruyne 6 years ago. But to come out and be the outright record holder is an incredible feat in its own. And I know a lot of people point to his assists from set pieces. I think he had about 13 or 14 of those. That's also a record. If it's 13, it's tied with Steven Gerrard from 2013. If it's 14, it's the outright record. And I know people might use that as a way of denigrating the award and the records, but in my opinion, that shows you how great a player he is. Because even with set pieces, it's difficult to score. Yes, there's been an uptick in how much in the efficiency in set piece efficiency this season and in recent years, with teams placing increasing emphasis on them. But it also means that with the increased scrutiny, it's a lot harder to score or create consistently. And it points to the quality of Bruno Fernandes as a player, and not just that, but the intelligence as well. And I think it is an absolutely well deserved award that has been a long time coming, in my view. Now we move on to Young Player of the Season. So this is the best player in the league, but I think the cutoff is 23 years of age. And it's, I think, as of September, but I'm going to do it my way, which is going to be 23 at the end of the season. If you're over 23, so if you're 24 and up by the end of the season, you don't count for this award. So I actually have a couple shout outs to make before I get into my podium. For me, Eli Junior Krupi at Bournemouth, top scoring teenager, Premier League teenager of all time in a single season. Big achievement, especially considering this is his first this is his first year in the Premier League. So to adapt that well that quickly and to show the game intelligence, the finishing ability that he showed to get 13 goals in the league is quite incredible. Another is Matheus Fernandes, a player that I greatly admire at West Ham. He's been really good. Granted, they got relegated, but I think he's elevated his game to a different level from what he was at Southampton last year, and he looks like a real star in the making. But onto my podium. Third place, I've got Lewis Hall, who, for some reason I can't fathom, isn't in England's World Cup squad this year. I think he is the second best left back in the league, second only to another podium finisher for this award. But going forward defensively, he's continued to make the grow in the right direction, and it's only a matter of time now before a top team comes calling and pays absolutely massive money for him. Second is the best left back in England this season, and best left back for England as well, in Nico O'Reilly, who, credit to Nico O'Reilly, but it's also a prime example of Pep Guardiola's genius in turning a midfielder into a fullback and a fullback and vice versa, because he's done it. Philip Lahm was a right back turned into a world-class central midfielder, same with Joshua Kimmich, both under Pep. This time around, he's Nico Riley, midfielder from Man City Academy, turned into the best Premier League left back. His runs, it's he's a rare physical specimen, especially at fullback, in that he's tall, he's quick, he's got good feel. So he's got the ball playing ability of a midfielder, but he's also quick. He's got defensive intelligence of a fullback as well. And of course, going forward, he's brilliant. He gets himself into the right position time after time. And we saw that in the Carabao Cup final where he scored that brace against Arsenal, both from ghosting in at the back post and finishing off with brilliant headers. So he is a player that is thoroughly deserving of this award. Signing of the season. Now, this is a bit more of a complicated one because there's so many players that could have won this. I know people mention Semenyo and Gehi for City, but for me, what not necessarily negates them, but what holds them back in this category is that they were January signings. Now, if they were signed in the summer window and they were there for the full year, I could give them this award and I would have them on my podium. But for the fact they were signed in January and therefore only had half the season to make an impact, for me means that I can't really compare them to those who've been there and made an impact year round. So I'm going to start off with number three on this podium, and that is Ryan Cherky, who, granted, I think a lot of people almost forget he started the season off quite slow. He was decent, but you could tell he was finding his feet in Premier League and just getting used to the physicality coming from League One. And he's ended the season on its here. He's shown himself to be the player that anyone who's played FM since about 2018 knows about. Um, or 2020 maybe, from Lyon. So that's the quick feeds, the intelligence, the movement, and just creativity, his vision. And we've seen it time and time again where he changes. For example, the 2-1 game against Arsenal in the Premier League, he just changed that game. He scored the opener with what can only be described as pure footballing brilliance. The way he danced around a few Arsenal players, think Declan Rice, Zubimendi, and Gabriel, which if you were to name three of the toughest players to get around in the league, they would probably be in your top 10. So to get around all those guys in one move and to finish off past David Raya, who again, best keeper in the league, is an incredible, just a sign of the incredible talent he is. Number two, this might be a personal bias for me, as a United fan, but Senne Lammens has been an absolute revelation as a Manchester United goalkeeper. Over the past 5, 6 years, it's been a problem position for the club. Um, First of towards end of David De Gea's time at Manchester United, he was always a brilliant shot stopper, but as the club tried to move towards more of a ball playing keeper, it was clear he had his limit. He had found his limitations there, and so that was what contributed to David De Gea leaving the club. Andre Onana and Arte Binder since then have been poor. Let's just put it that way. I'll put it nicely. They've been poor. Yes, Onana can play a wicked through ball, but what I would always say, especially in this day and age where teams want people who are comfortable in ball, with a keeper and a defender, the first thing they should be able to do is keep the ball out of the net, is stop the opposition from scoring. And that's one area where Onana and Binder were huge liabilities, especially from set pieces, as we've spoken about. The increased emphasis this season, both are just seem both were usually physically dominated by opposition players, and it created a lot of panic in the United backline. And that's the worst thing you can do as a keeper is spread panic around those in front of you, because as we know, panic and pressure forces mistakes. So Senna Lamens, he's not made many credible saves. He's made some great saves, but what he's brought is a calmness and a sense of control to the back line. And I mean, it helps that he's quite a tall, big lad who's physically imposing and isn't afraid to come out and claim the ball under pressure, which again, it's been really helpful for the team. There is even a video. I'll see if I can find it and link it to your show notes if I can, but there is a video of Manchester United players being asked who the um unsung hero of the season was, and majority of them did mention Senna Lamens. But onto the signing of season, for me is there's been one player who has absolutely transformed his club. Um, and when I say transformed, I don't just mean how they play and what they do, but I mean Sunderland got promoted this season. People may have tipped them for a league to go back down immediately or to narrowly survive. But next year, Sunderland are going to be playing in the Europa League, courtesy of a seventh and eighth place finish in the league. And the one man who, well, I mean, it's a team game, and obviously Regis Libri, the head coach, has been absolutely fantastic for that. But the one man I think who deserves credit more than anyone else is Granit Xhaka. Now, I know when he came back in, there was some doubt about whether he could keep up with the physicality of the league and the pace of the league at 33 years old. But the work he's done in helping the Sunderland players around him. The young guys like Noah Siddiqui and Habib Diarra, in terms of growing the game and building an understanding of football and when to move forward, when to drop back, when to just hold on to the ball. It has been absolutely incredible. Sunderland's worst run of the season, I can't remember how many games they went without winning, but I do remember watching some of the games, and that was when Chaka was out injured, and you could see the struggle they had in terms of getting results, holding on to leads, and even just chasing games. It was a struggle for them because he's not just the mental and spiritual leader of that team. He is the guy in the middle of the park who controls the game. He's the one taking the ball off the centre backs. He's distributing it. He's dictating play and the tempo of the game. And he has been, without a doubt, the signing of the season for 25-26. Next up is most improved player of the season. This one I actually had a lot of difficulty coming up with. I mean, I had two names for the podium, and I have just thought of a third. So I'm going to start off with the third guy. In bronze place is Igor Thiago. Hard to say he's the most improved player, because he's been at Brentford for 2 years now, and granted, most of the first year, i.e., last season, he was injured. So it is hard to put him in there as most improved, considering we didn't really have a baseline for his levels of performance anyway. But credit where credit is due. Like I've mentioned, he broke the Brentford record for most goals in a single Premier League season. He hit 22. Before that, it was Ivan Toney and Brandon Bruno who had 20 each. Um, and I don't think a lot of people were expecting that from him. I mean, he challenged Erling Haaland for the golden beat up till about game week 35, where he just seemingly slowed down a little bit. But again, credit where it's due. He's been fantastic this season, and I just felt his name deserved to come up here. Number two for me, Jeremy Doku. He's been around for about 3 years now with City, and we've seen him as a player with a lot of promise. He reminds me kind of Vinicius Jr. years ago when that video went out of Benzema talking about Vinicius, and I think his exact words were, "On my mama, he's playing against us," and that's what Doku has reminded me of over in the previous two seasons with Man City. He is a fantastic dribbler of the ball. He's capable of taking anyone on and causing havoc in any back line. But his decision making, his final ball have usually been lacking. And you can put that down to age and experience, footballing intelligence, but something this season has finally clicked for him, especially towards the latter end of the season where he suddenly began to create a lot more. Look at the Everton game, for example. That's the best example. A few weeks back, City 1-0 up. He scored a brilliant goal, Jeremy Doku. And before they knew it, they were 3-1 down against Everton. And they were in dire straits. From there, Erling Haaland, straight after Everton's third goal, Erling Haaland scored his second. And suddenly you had a tight game going into the last 2-3 minutes of added time. And out of nowhere, Jeremy Doku produces a second bit of magic for that game, scoring, cutting in from left wing and bending one into the far corner. And I think that's emblematic of the growth of Jeremy Doku this season. In previous seasons, we won't really see that, but this year in a big game, showing up with big goals time after time, showing up with big performances, he has been a revelation this year. And unfortunately, there's one person ahead of him. And again, this probably points to this brings back what I've mentioned about Pep Guardiola and his seeming magic in terms of converting midfielders into fullbacks, vice versa. Because Matheus Nunes, in fact, it's crazy because the current City team, the fullbacks, starting fullbacks, are both converted central midfielders. So, most improved player of the season for me is Matheus Nunes. Um, it's crazy because he was signed as a midfielder last season. maybe the season before, £60 million. And a few months in, Pep Guardiola came out and said, I don't see him playing in my midfield. And so he started playing him at right back. And he struggled quite a bit. Like, he was a weak link in the defense last year. This season, however, it's been a completely different story. He and Kusanov have basically shut down that right wing. And that comes from pace off the ball, composure on the ball. And Matheus Nunes going forward is it's not what you expect from from a typical central midfielder because he's quite quick. He's quite quick on the overlap. He's really good at bombing forward and just showing a really good burst of pace. Yeah, and of course, as a central midfielder, he on the former central midfielder, he is absolutely brilliant on the ball. He's technically sound, technically gifted, and so he's. It's hard to say where he might be a liability because he's defensively solid. Going the other way, he's really good, really productive. He's quick, so he's quick, he's strong, so he can hold his own ground one on one. He's technically adept, and he's showing a tactical intelligence and understanding now this season. So for me, all this combined, he is without a doubt the most improved player this season. Now on to what I would say is the toughest. I know I said this is toughest award of the season in a different way from most improved player. With the most improved player, I struggled to think of. I had the winner and a clear number two, and I struggled to think of any more players. But with manager of the season, this is one where it generally could go to three, four different people, and just to cover everything, I'm going to give you five names. Two of them are shout outs, three on the podium, obviously one winner. The two shout-outs, I have to give it to Vitor Pereira, who has done an absolutely brilliant job at Nottingham Forest since he took over after Shondash was sacked. And just to show you the job he did, he is the fourth permanent manager Nottingham or head coach Nottingham Forest had this season. And when he took over from Shondash, the club was in dire straits. They were struggling. They were on a poor run of form. They really, really were looking like relegation candidates with West Ham and Tottenham Hotspur. It was the three of them for that last relegation place. And it was almost a bit of a shameful situation for a club that was in Europe last. Oh, a club that finished in Europa League places last year and was still in the Europa League knockout stages this year. Vitor Pereira came in, and the first thing he did, or one of the first things he did, was he changed the way they played under Shandaish. He moved into an old school 4-4-2, but rather than an old school 4-4-2 that sits back, it's a pressing 4-4-2. Morgan Gibbs White being shifted out to the left to almost be like an inside left mid winger forward. It was a really, really impressive bit of coaching from him. And the result is Nottingham Forest, I think, before they lost to Manchester United, won a 10-match unbeaten run under Vitor Pereira, which is an absolutely fantastic achievement when you think about the fact he took over a team that was in a relegation dogfight. So he deserves a lot of credit for the work he did with them. And granted the loss, but he did take them to a Europa League semi-final where they lost to eventual winners Aston Villa. So doing that while keeping the team clear of relegation is a fantastic achievement in itself. Number four for me, Daniel Farker. Daniel Farker, I think, he is the, how do I put this? He's proof that certain teams, when they come up and they get relegated, they need to keep the manager to come bring them back up again. Reason I say that is Daniel, granted, he got promoted with Leeds last year, but he wasn't there when they got relegated. But he did get relegated with Norwich, who let him go, and we're at Norwich now. But the importance of that is when a manager comes in, he brings you up from Championship into the Premier League. Even if you go down, he goes down with you. that year in the Premier League is a great learning experience for managers, and sometimes you just need to stick with them to bring you back up. And Leeds, they came up with him, and there were rumors that they were going to fire him as soon as he got promoted because they needed someone with Premier League experience who could keep a team up. And like I said, Daniel Farker had gone down when he was with Norwich. He hadn't, that was his learning experience. This year, they didn't start out too hot. I think it took until about October, November for him to make a tactical change to that back five that he did. And that absolutely reformed the club because suddenly they were a lot more defensively solid without losing that offensive identity. And it brought out the best in players like Noah Okafor, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and people like they've got the perfect wing backs in Gabriel Goodmanson and Jaden Bogle who have the energy and have that attacking flair to go forward. And of course, they got skilled players at centre back and midfield as well to keep the team defensively solid. But he deserves a lot of credit for learning on the job, but also learning from his previous experiences with Norwich. Because at the end of the season, actually, not even at the end of the season, from about, I want to say about January onwards, maybe February, Leeds were nowhere near the relegation conversation. And that's because of the work Daniel Farke did in terms of adapting to circumstances. Now, onto the podiums for the manager of the year. First off is going to be Andoni Iraola, who's now left Bournemouth and is in the hunt for another big Premier League job. More on that later. But he has been absolutely fantastic for Bournemouth in the 2, 3 years that he's been there. He has taken them to new heights after new heights. And this is all despite the fact that Bournemouth are the stereotypical sellers club. I mean, last summer alone, they lost starting goalkeeper in Kepa, starting left back in Milos Kerkez, starting centre back in Ilyas Zabani and Dean Howson. They, yeah, I mean, and in January they lost a top scorer, top assister, best overall player in Antoine Semenyo's Man City. And granted, he doesn't have much say in the transfers, so he can't really claim a lot of credit for the players brought in to replace those guys. But what he can claim credit for is getting the best out of each player and developing players in his ward time after time again. We've seen it this year where Adrian Tufa is suddenly looking like one of the best left backs in the league. He's one of the better left backs in the league. Alex Scott is unfortunate to have been snubbed for the England World Cup squad, but that tells you where he is. That this guy from Bristol City 2, 3 years ago is now a leading midfielder in the Premier League, and one that's been linked to the likes of Man City, Arsenal, Manchester United. That is testament to how good he's been under um, Andoni Iraola. And of course, I did mention Eli Krupi as one of the young player of season candidates. He's also been brilliant under Andoni Iraola. Ryan came in as Semenyo's replacement in January, and you can see the growth in his game. He's been fearless, he's been creative, he's added a different dynamic to the team, and it is testament to Iraola that as the team has changed over and over, he's continued to get the best out of players available to him. And for the first time next season, Bournemouth are going to be in the Europa League, which is a huge achievement for everything he's done. And I mean, they were in with the shouts for the Premier League, for the Champions League until the last game of the season. So that is a huge achievement. And to do all this knowing that you were leaving. I mean, he announced he was leaving a month or two ago. They've already got Marco Rose in as his replacement. But to do this and to get the best out of your players, to keep them motivated, knowing that you're leaving, is still a massive, massive achievement that can't be underestimated. Number two on manager of season is for me. I mentioned Sunderland already. They were promoted this season. They were promoted, by the way, via the playoffs. So they didn't come first or second last season championship. I think they came about fourth, fifth. But anyway, the fact is they won the playoffs. and they are now going to be playing in the Europa League next season. That is a magnificent achievement when you think about it, because I think it might be the first time it's ever been done, but it is such a brilliant achievement to take a team that has just been promoted and that's being tipped for relegation or to be in a relegation battle all the way to an eighth place finish and in Europe. It deserves it. I can't give you the words to describe that. All I can say is this is a promoted team that finished eighth in the league, beating Chelsea on the final day to get into Europe and knocking Chelsea out of Europe for next season. That's all I can. I think that is the best way of putting things, just to show you how good he's been as a head coach manager at EC. But unfortunately, he's just behind this guy who we've spoken about Bournemouth losing a best players, but Andoni Iraola had continuity in that he's been manager or head coach at Bournemouth for the last 2, 3 years. The winner of this award, in my view, the winner of this award, first head coaching job, they've lost because he's replacing a guy who was a head coach for about 5 or 6 years. They lost a lot of players on that team and they missed out on Europe by 2 points, or was it 1 point? They finished ninth place and they missed out on first season ever in Europe. But he deserves a lot of credit. Keith Andrews. When your team loses your starting goalkeeper in Mark Flecken, your starting central midfielder and your best midfielder, some might argue your captain, your leader in Christian Norgard. Christian Norgard. Um, when you lose your top scorer and your two best forwards from last year in Johan Wissa, Brian Mbumo. And of course, this is a team that hasn't exactly got the funds to the same amount of funds like Bournemouth have got. It's not a team with the same amount of resources. Um, Thomas Frank left the team after 4 or 5 years to go manage at Tottenham. All this while making it his first ever head coaching job for Keith Andrews. I mean, at the start of the season, even Brentford fans were tipping the team for relegation just because they couldn't believe what Matthew Benham, the Brentford owner, was doing in hiring Keith Andrews, who again was hired at Brentford as a set piece coach. So to be made head coach from set piece coach seemed like a very risky move for a lot of people. A lot of Brentford fans could see them going down. A lot of people had them going down or being in the relegation fight this battle this season. And the job he's done for them has been absolutely fantastic. I mean, they have finished eighth, and it is no small achievement. They've beaten United. They've really given Liverpool tough games. They've beaten Chelsea, I'm pretty sure. They've given City to run for their money. They've given Arsenal a run for their money. Every team that plays them is in for the battle of a lifetime. And that is credit to the work, not just the work of Matthew Benham and his team, but also to Keith Andrews and the ethos and spirit he's inculcated into this Brentford team. And for me, that makes him the thoroughly deserving manager of the season. Onto the Overachievers Award. This is for teams that far outperform expectations. I'm gonna give Bournemouth a nice little third on the third, so on the podium. The reason I have them there is they might have been expected to charge for Europe this season. Um, probably a Conference League or Europa League place, but they have they have gone to Europa League in sixth place, but they pushed a lot closer than a lot of people expected them to. They were 1 or 2 results away from making it into the Champions League for next season, and I think that is a huge, huge achievement. They should be proud of how they've played and how they've done. Um, and so they come in third as for overachievers this season. Second place, like I've mentioned already, Sunderland promoted this year and going to Europe next season. Reason I have Sunderland second, despite the amazing achievement, is they did make quite a lot of transfers. They did spend quite a lot. I think they were top five spenders last summer, or top five net spenders last summer in Premier League, which for a promoted team is quite incredible. When it's quite extraordinary when you think about it. And it's not just the amount of money they spent, but on who they spent it on. Um, Lucero Katruida and Nodi Mukiele, both players who've played regularly in Champions League. Mukiele with PSG, Katruida with RB Leipzig, and Feyenoord before that. Um, Granit Xhaka, I mean, Premier League experience, Arsenal leader, one year, one Bundesliga with Bayer Leverkusen in an unbeaten season, leader in that team as well. Brian Brobby, Leverkusen, Ajax player, former Leverkusen Ajax player, played in Champions League loads of times, was even linked to Manchester United at a point. So they have got some players. Enzo Lefebvre, sorry, was on loan at Sunderland from last January, I believe, and he was on loan from Roma. So they've got players who have got top level experience and have been absolute and have played at the highest level. So it's not a negative, but for me, it makes the achievement a little less incredible and more very impressive. Overachievers, the winner of this award for me is still Brentford because you think about who they've lost and who they've replaced with. Coming Kelleher was Liverpool's backup goalkeeper, first season as a lead goalkeeper. I've mentioned Keith Andrews already, his first season as a head coach. Igor Thiago, I've mentioned his first season in England last year, injured for most of it, for lots of it, and so first fully fit season, and he's hit 22 goals, finished second in Golden Boot race. Dango Ouattara, they brought him in from Brentford again, sorry, from Bournemouth. Not played in Europe, not really. He was good, but even when I saw that fee, I was a bit shocked by it. It did seem a bit high to me. Um, Struggling to think of any other signings they've made or any other big signings, and that tells you how small the squad is. But not just that, but how well they've utilized the resources available to them, and how much they've overperformed what you'd expect from them. So winners of the overachievers for the season, Brentford. Underperformers. Now these are teams who were just they disappointed everyone watching them. Um, and I think a lot of people will agree with the three teams I have on the podium. At number three, Newcastle. I do not know what happened to them, but for a period in this season, they went on a run where they did not look like Newcastle. When you think of Newcastle, especially in St. James's Park, you think of a team that come rain, sun, snow, win, draw, lose, you're in for a battle. They will fight. There's energy in that team. There's energy in the fans. And no matter what, how poor they might play, they play with energy. And this year, there were so many games where they were just lacking in energy. They were lacking in enthusiasm to the point where people were doubting Eddie Howe as their head coach, which is a bit shocking. And I guess part of it is from the transfer window they had last summer, where they were without a director of football and a technical director, and they had to bring someone in on an interim basis, which isn't exactly conducive to long-term business planning, especially when it comes to transfers. But I think the summer definitely hindered them in terms of the performances this season. Hopefully they'll be a lot better next year. I mean, they've already lost Anthony Gordon as I speak, to be fair. So who knows? We'll have to wait and see what happens in the rest of the summer. Number two, Liverpool, who, as I speak, earlier today have sacked Arne Slot after this year. I mean, they finished fifth. You won't think that's the worst place to finish, but they did break the British transfer record twice last summer. One for Florian Wirtz, second for Alexander Isak. Even though um And really, they just looked out of it. There were a lot of games where Liverpool looked confused. The players didn't seemingly know what to do, how to play, defend. The defenders looked all over the place. Virgil van Dijk looked confused in a lot of games. He made a lot of baffling decisions as a defender, which is not what you expect from someone with his experience and quality. Mohamed Salah, I mean, to be fair, we did kind of see Salah tail off towards the end of last season, so it should not have come as a surprise that he's not got the legs anymore. But he was really bad this year. Um, Only shining lights really were Zoboslai and young Real Ngumuha, and I don't think any other, maybe Mamadashvili. Mamadashvili. I don't think any other Liverpool player can look back on the season and say, and per se, they were happy with their personal performances. Um, So yeah, I mean, if a manager has been fired after a season, if a manager is fired this season after winning the Premier League title, it tells you how poorly they've performed. And I think they were the second worst title defenders after Manchester United's team under David Moyes, who finished in seventh place. But they weren't as bad as the number one team, as the biggest underperformers of the season. Tottenham Hotspur finishing 17th in the Premier League for a second season running, going through, what was it? They had Thomas Tuchel, Igor Tudor, Roberto De Zerbi. A team like Tottenham Hotspur with a new big fancy stadium should not be in a position where fans are celebrating, the players are running onto the pitch on the last day of the season because they've avoided relegation. And that tells you how far they've fallen, how poor they were this season. That a team that could spend £60 million on Xavi Simons, £60 million on Mohamed Kudus, who else did they buy? £30 million or £40 million on Conor Gallagher in January. Um, £60 million on Dominic Solanke, though that may have been last season. Randall Colomwani in on loan this year. Matthew Tell's loan from last year made permanent in the summer. You think about all the names I'm mentioning, and this is a team that finished in 17th place in the league and was happy because they avoided relegation. It is shameful, it is embarrassing, and frankly, underperformance doesn't do how they played this season any justice because for most of the season they were horrible. They were abject to watch. It was a lack of desire, a lack of passion. You would think players getting paid tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds, and I hate making this argument, but people on that kind of money would at least show some energy, show some thought to the people paying to watch them, to the people paying their wages. Embarrassing, just frankly embarrassing. And I can't even call them winners of this award because they are just losers, all round just losers. So underperformers of the season, losers of this award, Tottenham Hotspur. On to a bit more positive stuff. Favorite game of the season. Um, there's a few shout outs I want to make because the Manchester City Liverpool 2-1 against Liverpool game at Anfield was a brilliant game to watch. Liverpool went up 1-0, could have, with Dominic Zoboslai doing what's seemingly now his trademark in terms of long range free kicks. Um, Missed chances to make it to go 2 or 3 up. Bernardo Silva gets a goal out of absolutely nowhere. Right after Gary Neville says he and Erling Haaland need to step up. So of course they do and get a goal out of nowhere. Go draw the game back level. Start pressing City start pressing. Win a penalty out of a poor decision by Alisson. Uncharacteristic decision as well. Penalty won by Matheus Nunes for a forward. Uh, Erling Haaland scores the second. Great. And now it's a slug. It's can Liverpool draw, get a goal? Can Liverpool get a goal back? Can Liverpool draw this game level? Game goes on. And I want to say about the last minute of added time, what happens? Alisson is up for a free kick or a corner. Ryan Cherky rolls the ball into the net from halfway line. But in the process, there's the whole thing with Szoboszlai drawing Haaland back, referee playing advantage, Haaland then drawing Szoboszlai back, meaning the advantage is over. Even though the ball ends up in the back of net, the player gets called back to give Szoboszlai a red card and Man City a free kick, even though the ultimate aim of an advantage is to help the team score, trying to score a goal. Even though they scored a goal, it was cancelled. And what should have been a 3-1 game ended up 2-1 with a red card and a last minute free kick. Everyone was all over the place. Game ended. It was absolute chaos. People were confused. People were angry. People were upset. Some people were happy. And somehow it's only a shout out. But it tells you how many great games there were this season. And I'm going to go on to another one with seemingly Manchester City, I'll be honest, are involved in about 3 of these games. The other shout out, Manchester City 5, Fulham 4. This was a game I know because Manchester City were up 5-1 about 50, 60 minutes in. And suddenly by the 90th minute, it was 5-4. And Vardio had to clear the ball off the line to prevent Fulham from coming back to 5-5. Only reason why this is a shout out is because I didn't actually watch the game until about 89 minutes in when it was 5-4 and Fulham were chasing that equalizer. So I'm sure it was a great game. I mean, any game with 9 goals in it is always going to be extremely interesting. But unfortunately, because I didn't watch most of it, I can't really call it my favorite game. So it's only a shout out for now. Now, on to number 3. Here we go. The final Man City game. Manchester United 2, Manchester City 0. Michael Carrick's first game involved absolutely battered Man City. I mean, we could have gone 4 or 5-0 up in that game, if not for some offside calls, if not for hitting the post, if not some great saves for Gianluigi Donnarumma. It was a game that had all United fans so happy. I mean, I remember going into it, Carrick's first game, and I was nervous as hell. Watched it, we went 1-0, we missed a few chances, went 1-0 up. I said, okay, City are going to come back now. We looked like scoring. We looked more and more like scoring. City didn't really do anything. Then we got 2-0. Could have gone 3, could have gone 4. At the end of the game, City had 1 shot on target, which was quite straightforward for Sinalanas to save. Absolutely loved it. Of course, there's always the United bias in there because, well, I love to see my team batter our rivals. Granted at home, but still, in the first game under a new manager, you want to see that kind of game where City were outplayed on and off the ball and never really got going because of how well we played. Now, on to number 2 on the podium is literally the game, Manchester United's next game after that City game, which was 3-2 against Arsenal at the Emirates. Again, it had one of my favorite goals of the season, Dogu's half volley from 30 yards out, which off the underside of the bar. I don't know what it is, but every time someone scores a goal where it goes off the bar, it just looks so much nicer. It looks so much better. The goal feels a lot stronger. There's more of a to it. And frankly, that was a great game. Arsenal went up 1-0. Never really felt like they got going. We got back in 1-1 through a mistake from Zubimendi. And then came back. Dogu hit that absolute stunner, silenced the Emirates 2-1. We were up. A bit of a defensive mishap from an Arsenal corner. They came back 2-2, and then Matheus Cunha. Sheshko chesting it out to Bruno, playing that 1-2 with Kobe. Kobe feeds Matheus Cunha. 30 yards out, Cunha to the bottom corner. Scenes. I mean, I lost my voice that day, shouting and screaming at that game. Texting all my mates, texting my brother, and it was an absolutely fantastic game. But the best game for me, my favorite game this season, was pure unfiltered football. It's a game that any neutral would just love to see because it wasn't a team 4-0 up and another team coming back. It was just chaos. And as Manchester United Bournemouth 4-4 back in December, this game, United were, honestly, we were on top throughout first half. In fact, we only went in at halftime 1-0 up. Was shameful because we should have been 3-0 up at halftime. Within 7 minutes of the second half started, Bournemouth are up 2-1. Marcus Tavernier just decides to turn the switch on. So what do United do? Typical fashion, we come back 2-2. Bruno Fernandes scores a free kick, 3-2. After, of course, Tavernier had scored his free kick and make it 2-1 to them. 3-2 to United. Great game. Bournemouth equalize, make it 3-3. Right, okay. United go back the other and make it 4-3. Now, what do they do? Eli Krupi comes out. Absolutely fantastic touch and finish, 4-4. About 10 minutes plus added time to go. Bournemouth have another chance, and Senna Lamens comes up huge, makes a stop, and then game kind of fizzles out from there. It is one of those games where you just never knew what was coming. Every chance seemed like a goal might come from it. The teams didn't seem all that pressed about defending. It was a lot more about let's outscore the other guy. And frankly, 4-4 felt like a great result, a fair result for everyone involved. And a game with 8 goals, going back and forth. What was it? 5 lead changes. That's NBA type stuff, not football. That's not Premier League football. So it was nice, especially in this day and age where games are slow, methodical, tactical, a lot of set pieces, to have a game where teams just focus on attacking and creative joy was a breath of fresh air that I don't think a lot of people will disagree with. Now, I'm going to end this with I've given out a lot of individual awards, players and teams. So I'm going to end it off with a team award. So team of the season, I'm going to pick players from different teams and just have them in. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to play 4-2-2-2, like a Ralph Ragnick, Pep Guardiola type 4-2-2-2. So the middle two, so two central midfielders, two kind of wide forwards, wide midfielders in a way, and then two strikers up top. Just because I feel like these are the 11 best players this season. I'm of course going to give shout outs for every position or any position where I feel like a player is unlucky to miss out on. But here we go. Keeper of season, in post, I mean, we've mentioned it 2 or 3 times already. David Raya, best keeper in the league, without a doubt. He's there. But Robin Roos at Sunderland's done a brilliant job coming in from Netherlands and adapting really quickly to Premier League football. Same with Senna Lamens coming in from Belgium, adapting really quickly Premier League football. Both been absolutely instrumental in the work that teams have done this season and in where their teams finished position wise. Onto the back four. I'm going to go. There's two clubs represented here, two teams represented here, and I think that's fair. By the way, this team of the season is quite Arsenal, Man City heavy because, well, top two teams in the league deserve the most players here, in my opinion. Right back, Matheus Nunes, we've covered him. Left back, O'Reilly, covered him as well. Centre backs, I don't. There's no doubt the best centre back pairing in Premier League, probably best club centre back pairing in the world. Saliba and Gabriel. I don't think anyone can really beat that. They're quite. It's like a Rolls Royce, and Saliba is like the Rolls Royce of the two. He's the kind of calm, composed guy, whereas Gabriel is more feisty. I want to say like Ferrari, like he's got that engine, the horsepower, like he's aggressor, the aggressor of the two, but he's also the one that's extremely potent from set pieces. He's the one where he's, in my opinion, probably the better one. He's the more passionate one. I mean, years ago, a couple years, seasons ago, he was the one most likely to make a mistake. But I think he's cleaned that side of his game up now. And so, just on basis that he scores more goals, he's probably the better centre back. But both of them are just absolutely fantastic, whether individually or as a pairing. It's the two of them and David Raya just form the unbeatable, unbreakable spine of a defense. And that's the best I can say about them, really. Going into the midfield too, Declan Rice, covered him off already. And this might be a bit controversial, but Elliot Anderson, I think, has been absolutely brilliant. And I always like to give smaller clubs a bit of representation in these roles. He's been a revelation I'm hoping the news is false that he hasn't picked Man City over United. I really want him at United. He'll be a great signing for us. And he is just a all-round fantastic player. I will give shout outs to Bernardo Silva in his final season at City. Always there when you need him. Always turning up in the biggest moments, biggest games. I've mentioned his equalizer against Liverpool in that game. The 2-1 Premier League game where they beat Arsenal. He was the man of the match. He was everywhere. He was the guy leading the press. He was the guy stepping in, and he was last man defending Havertz on one occasion. He was heading the ball away from Victor Gyökeres in Man City box on another occasion, leading the press. He was one showing up for the ball to take pressure off his defenders. He was just all over the place, and that's in a good way. And that's Bernardo Silva in a nutshell. And of course, Dominic Szoboszlai, who played at right wing, central midfield, attacking midfield, right back for Liverpool this season, and was a credit in all positions he played in. He did his role fantastically well. He was Liverpool's best player of the season without a doubt. Always professional, always energetic, always bringing at least a 7 out of 10 every week. So he deserves a shout out as well. In the midfield and wide forwards here, I'm going to go Bruno Fernandes, player of the season, already mentioned. Antoine Semenyo, who had a brilliant season both at Bournemouth and later on in the second half at Man City, scored some important goals. Great player. It's been great to see him progress from Bristol City up through Bournemouth and just how he's shown up and he's improved every season at Bournemouth, and then finally at City he's taken an extra step up in his game. Up top, shout out to Jeremy Doku on that one as most improved, one of our most improved player of season nominees as well. Up top, top scorers, Erling Haaland, usual. I mean, he was on a tier to start the season and kind of faded over as the months went by, but again, pops up when City need him most, and scoring, that's what, 3-4 seasons in a row with at least 24 league goals. It's never easy, so he deserves to be there. He is the best striker in the Premier League, one of the best in the world. And Igor Thiago, again, a revelation. He's been fantastic. First fully fit season with Brentford, and he's hit 22. He's come second in the Golden Boot race. Watching him play, some people might describe him as a target man, but watching him play, there's so many facets of his game I didn't realize he had. He is great with the ball. He's actually good at not just holding it up, but playing through passes. His vision is underrated. I've seen him switch the ball more than I've expected from a striker in the Premier League. So he gets a lot of credit for that in my book. He's been really good for them. Of course, shout out to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, came in on a free signing at Leeds and scored 14 league goals, which is quite impressive, especially at his age and his past few seasons he had at Everton where he was injury ravaged. So it's nice to see him up and scoring again. And one of my perennial all-time favorite footballers in Danny Welbeck, who showing again he's timeless, really. 14 league goals as well this season. That's 34, 35 for Brighton. He's been really, really good. He's always been a great team player, and it's nice to see him breaking his own personal records for most Premier League goals in a season. Um, that wraps up my team of the season. So to summarize, it's David Raya, Matheus Nunes, William Saliba, Gabriel and Nico O'Reilly. We've got Declan Rice and Elliot Anderson in midfield, Bruno Fernandes and Antoine Semenyo in front of them, and Erling Haaland, Igor Thiago up top. Thank you for listening to this first episode of Talking Balls. Hopefully, I'll be a lot more regular with this podcast, and I hope to see you and hear from you guys again. If you have any questions, if you have any notes, please feel free to comment. To say something in the comment sections. If you just got positive feedback or even something you feel I could improve on, please also leave that in the comment section. Alternatively, you could send an email to dareToyan.com@gmail.com. So that's DARETOYAN@gmail.com. I will include that in the show notes as well. Thank you very much, guys, and have a lovely time.